You decide you're going to meditate. It's 2021, it's January, you wanted to give it a try. You hear meditation's awesome, or maybe you meditated for a while in your life and you kind of put it away and you want to start again. So you sit down, you say, I'm going to meditate for 10 minutes. You're like, yeah, I'm going to do this. So you put on your music, you burn the incense, you've got your meditation cushion, and you're ready to rock and roll. You close your eyes, you bring your hands into the Om Mudra, and you try to meditate, and your butt starts to itch, your nose starts to itch, you hear a sound, your belly grumbles, you start thinking about what happened on Netflix last night, or that mean thing your mom told you. And before you know it, you are somewhere else. That's when we label ourselves terrible meditators. We are the worst. This isn't for me. This isn't natural. Why do people do this? Y'all, let's figure out what Patanjali says about this. We are going into Dharana, which is the sixth limb of yoga. So if you've labeled yourself a bad meditator, if you've meditated in the past, this episode is for you. So you've been to a few or maybe many yoga classes and you are hooked. Somehow you feel better, kinder, more connected to yourself and those around you. Your friends view you as a hippie now, and your parents, well, they think it's a phase. Regardless, when you are on your mat, you are home. Yoga teachers and students, come learn how yoga can help you navigate the daily grind, breakups, your anxiety from a place of clarity and compassion. Welcome to the Modern Yogi Podcast, hosted by me, Laura Siljander. Misfits, earthlings, yogis, take a deep breath, check in to see how you're doing, body, mind, and soul, because you have arrived. Okay, welcome back, yogis. Stoked you're here. Well done taking time out of your day to support your yoga practice. And maybe a more Svadhyaya self-study kind of way. Welcome, I am Laura. Last name is a little scary, but if you want to give it a try, it is Siljander. Siljander. I know it's hard, but I'm just going to put it out there in case you want it. We are in Patanjali's 8 Limbs of Yoga series, and we're wrapping it up. But before we jump into that, let's review. Patanjali, a guy who wrote the Yoga Sutras, a bunch of lessons in a book, and there's a lot in the Yoga Sutras, not just the 8 limbs of yoga, but we have it. We are going to stay, though, with the 8 limbs of yoga. I think it's a beautiful, concise way of how we can reach a state of samadhi or suffer less. Suffer less. Let's quickly review. We've got the yamas, which is the first limb of yoga, things like kindness, truthfulness, non-stealing. We've got the niyamas, things like self-study and self-discipline and contentment, purity. We've got limb number 3, which are the asanas, the postures. Limb number 4, pranayama, the breathing techniques. Limb number 5, pratyahara, to turn inward or to withdraw from the senses. And now we are in limb number 6, dharana, also known as concentration or one point of focus. Before I get into dharana, there is a little bit of chatter in the yoga world or things that I've read that have been somewhat conflicting, so I really want to bring it to your attention so you can make up your own mind. Some yoga teachers or yoga researchers believe that the 8 limbs of yoga are kind of like a wheel. They're pretty continuous. They're not really like a ladder that you climb one by one. However, I think that Patanjali ingeniously put these in a nice sequential order on purpose. Now, this is Laura's opinion. To me, it makes sense that we start with social ethic. So we have this foundation for living our life off the mat where we spend most of our time. So we start with how can we kind of double check that we are being kind, double check that we are living our truth, to double check that we're not living from a place of scarcity, to double check that are we walking with Brahma or Brahmacharya? Are we thinking about a higher power in mind? Are we being generous without being jealous? So it makes sense that this is a foundation. And then we move into the niyamas, which are personal practices that take care of yourself. like keeping your body, mind, and spirit clean, how to be content in your life. What does self-study look like to you? Self-discipline, things of that nature. And then we move into the asanas, which is where most of us started. But by moving the body in such a way, we're able to maybe sit in meditation longer. When we budget that time, that hour class or what have you, where we are moving and breathing and hanging out with ourselves, there's a lot of self-improvement. There's a lot of self-growth. There's a lot of transcending that can happen there. And then if you pair the breath with all of this, the science shows how it affects our moods for the better or for worse. And then Patanjali says, all right, those are pretty tangible things, but now we need to move a little bit deeper levels of consciousness. And those are the last 4 limbs of yoga. So it gets a little bit more woo-woo, more abstract, less concrete. But I think that we needed these concrete lessons, these concrete ideas before we could start to build on the things that are less concrete. Already last week we talked about pratyahara, withdrawing from the senses. And today we're going to go even deeper into this deeper level of consciousness and look at something called Dharana Concentration, the 6th limb of yoga, 1 point of focus. That's the definition, essentially. It's concentration or 1 point of focus for a period of time. Now there's some controversy, of course, with this limb of yoga. And I want to bring up both sides so you can make up your mind of which one works. That's why yoga is not a religion. If you don't follow all the steps of Dharana, doesn't mean you're going to some scary, fiery place. But I want to give you different ideas or the different ways that these limbs were presented to me. So I made up my mind and now it's your turn to make up yours. Concentration or 1 point of focus. Most lineages can get on board with that. However, in the Americas, here we do a lot of research with yoga. And a lot of our classes will say we're teaching meditation. They'll teach this idea of 1 point of focus. Now, 1 point of focus could mean that you are trying to focus on one thing. Yoga teachers, and I do it too, I strive to add in this element into my class, especially at the end, where either I give you a guided meditation where we follow our breath. Maybe I'll give you a mantra, so you're focusing on that one mantra. Maybe I am trying to walk you through a visualization. You're on the beach, you feel the breeze, and we're trying to focus the brain from the million things that you're thinking about to maybe 500,000, and then to 1,000, and then smaller and smaller and smaller, you see. Now, that is what we, and I think the Americas, view meditation as. However, Patanjali has a little bit of a different idea of what Dharana and meditation is. Patanjali refers to Dharana as you're training the mind to get ready for meditation. Or it's like right in the beginning of meditation. You're not quite there yet, but it's in the very beginning. The best way I can use a metaphor with this is jogging. So let's say you want to run a 5K. You want to run. And even if you don't, just pretend that I'm just using this trying to use it as a metaphor. You want to do a 5K. You got to run. So let's view the 5K as meditation. So you've got to put in the work to get to meditation, to that place of stillness, to that place of focus. So Patanjali says Dharana could be you're not running a 5K or 3.1 miles. You are jogging and training to run the 3.1 miles or the 5K. And that pratyahara is, okay, you're putting on your running clothes, you're putting in your headphones for the music, you got your shoes laced up, you're kind of withdrawing from everyone and saying like, I'm going to go for a jog now. Then you actually start to jog, getting ready for this 5K, that's Dharana. And then once you get into that race and you're able to run the 5K, that's your meditation. So Patanjali and Swami Satchidananda say two things. It's either a step before meditation, but after pratyahara, or it's the very beginning. The easiest way for me to wrap my brain around it is Dharana is training me for meditation. That's how I've wrapped my brain around it. Doesn't mean that was what works for you. So Dharana, it's perhaps training the mind to hold focus, which does not come naturally at all. The HuffPost said we have about 70,000 thoughts per day. It's a lot of thoughts. So it can be extremely challenging to sit down, especially depending on the day, and be like, I'm going to think about one thought. Like that 70,000 to one thought, that's really hard. That's why we label ourselves as terrible meditators. We sit down, we want to meditate, but when the mind wanders, which it will, you become frustrated. This creates a lot of discomfort, shame, and resistance. You just want to meditate, but you cannot focus your mind. And then that whole like, you are terrible at meditating voice starts to come up. This is what I like to tell my students. This is what I tell myself when my brain wanders, which I've been doing this a while and it still does. And some days I'm just going to stay in my shallow state of one point of focus because that's all I got. And that's why it's called a practice. And that's why you won't end up in a scary, fiery place if you don't do this right. In practice Dharana, body awareness and restlessness are supposed to start to slow down. So you don't feel the itches as much. You're not as focused on the sounds in the other room. But when this place is found, when everything starts to really quiet down, when you no longer are thinking about your to-do list, when you're no longer thinking about the thing that your ex-boyfriend told you or texted you, we move into the next limb of yoga, which is dhyana, but we're not going to focus on that. But when you start to lose track of time in your meditations, that's when Patanjali says that's true meditation. But Dharana is training for that. Dharana is training to get even deeper. There are different ways to try to do this. You can use something called candle gazing, or use any kind of object that you have in your house. You could grab a flower is what I love, or even a pencil. And what you do is you hold the object in your hand if you can, or if it's hot like a candle, you don't. And you try to take in as much as you can visualize. You take in like the textures, the different colors of what you're looking at, and then you close your eyes and you try to visualize that object that you're using in your mind. When you open your eyes and you view the nuances of it again, close your eyes, visualize it. Some people will use sound, so singing bowls or music, to focus their mind and try to focus their mind. Some people use their breath, the pranayama practice. Some people use mantra, so repeating the same word or words over and over to kind of quiet the mind. If you are into movement meditations, sometimes when you get so comfortable in your asana practice, that can almost be a form of dharana because you're so tuned in and dialed into your body. You're not focusing really on what the person next to you is doing. The music kind of fades away and it's only you, what you're being guided to do in your body on your mat. That's could definitely be a dharana practice. I have found that when I surf, when I'm on a wave, it's the only thing I can think about is me in that wave. If I think about something else, I'll fall in. It almost forces you, some activities will force you into a state of one point of focus. Obviously, visualization is a way, or mindfulness practices is a way to try to focus the brain on one thing. But when your mind wanders, which it will, y'all, it's supposed to. That's what Dharana is for. Instead of being like, you are the worst meditator in the world, it's, bring it back. My mind wandered to dinner. Bring it back. That's the practice of Dharana. So I hope that makes sense, that it's almost training for this even deeper level. So I just really want to normalize that in this state of Dharana, if your mind wanders, all you got to do is bring it back and try not to beat yourself up and say you're a bad meditator and just say, I'm doing Dharana right now. What do you think meditation is? We haven't gone over the next limb, but do you think meditation is when you're in this continuous, effortless flow of concentration? Or do you think it's more this one point of focus, your mind wanders and you bring it back, your mind wanders and you bring it back? Do you hang out with the researchers out here in the West who believe that this is meditation? Or are you more like, I'm kind of in agreement with Patanjali. It's kind of right before you really get into that true state of meditation. I also think that Patanjali added this in so we don't shame ourselves into thinking that we're the worst meditators ever. He added this in to say, this is training. You do this enough You bring in your tapas, your self-discipline. You do this enough, it will become more effortless. If you jog enough, at first it's gonna suck. It's gonna burn your legs. You're gonna be out of breath. You're gonna be so thirsty and so sore. But once you jog a few times, you will end up being able to do the 5K. If you do this enough, if you practice Dharana enough, you will find that you slip into states of even deeper consciousness, which we'll go into next week. And so I'm saying hang in there. And that on the days where you don't slip into that deeper level of consciousness, where you feel that kind of resistance because your mind is everywhere, you're doing your Dharana practice. You're still doing yoga. So however you decide to meditate, that's up to you. I have meditation playlist on my YouTube channel. It's anywhere from 8 minutes to 45 minutes of meditations and all different kinds. Anything from metta to positive affirmations and some mudras where we use our fingers to kind of try to focus the mind. I would start to maybe mess around with different ways to hit your Dharana practice and see what works for you. And it's also even more important to figure out what doesn't work for you. Even more important. This doesn't work for me, at least not today, at least not this week, maybe at least not this year. Maybe candle gazing or singing bowls were your jam, but this year they're not really resonating. Maybe you try mantra. So I have all different kinds on there. Again, most of them are around 8 minutes because I try to keep it really like an not achievable time, but nothing too, I feel like 8 minutes isn't scary. Over 10 minutes, it gets into the scary territory for some folks. I've noticed a lot of resistance there, so 8 minutes. So if you'd like to use that resource, feel free. Again, just a quick summary, Dharana, some people think of it as true meditation. Some folks think that it's the step right before true meditation. It's more of a training thing. Please, if when you find yourself beating yourself up and saying, I'm a crappy meditator, you're just in Dharana, that's all. You're just hanging out in Dharana, and that's still a yoga practice. It's a whole limb of yoga. Patanjali put it in there for a reason. All right, everyone. That's all I got for you this week. I hope that this was helpful for you and your yoga practice. Maybe next time you sit down to meditate, you find yourself wandering, just to gently bring it back to whatever you're trying to focus on. You're just in Dharana. Don't forget to practice that compassion with your thoughts, especially when you're meditating. Don't beat yourself up. Practice that compassion with your speech. That could also be your inner dialogue. And practice that compassion with that actions, and maybe trying to sit down and practicing your Dharana, kind of digging into that tapas or self-discipline. All right, I'll talk to you next week. Pura Vida. Oh, you're still here. Looks like you maybe want some more. If you would, share my podcast with someone or a yogi you think that would benefit from it. That's so incredibly helpful, and that's how you can support me. Another way you can support me is maybe following me on social, on my Instagram, practice_compassion, or leaving me a review. These are all ways that you can help me keep this podcast alive and growing. So please, if you would, take me up on my offer, help a gal out, and either leave a review or share this podcast with someone. All right, sweet friends, we'll talk soon. Meow.